to the Truth in My Days podcast, where we defend the Word of God against the challenges of men.
Hi, I'm Dana Torts, and welcome to another episode of the Truth in My Days radio program. Today, I'm here with John Torts and Jason Chan as they discuss the important topic of creation and evolution. We are continuing from the previous episode. We hope you enjoy.
In reality, we have had examples of stunning new evidence being found that should overthrow these claims. Let's see how scientists handle these. Let's start with the Laetoli footprints. Have you heard of the Laetoli footprints?
I've not. What are these?
Laetoli footprints are a trail of footprints that were found under a field of tuff in a place called Laetoli, which is in Tanzania. So to go over that in detail, when volcanoes erupt, you know that molten magma comes out, but as well vast quantities of volcanic ash. And the volcanic ash will settle on the ground for miles away from the volcano. They will settle on the ground like snow. And depending on the size of the eruption, you could get quite a thick layer of this ash.
Right.
And light and puffy at the beginning, but as it starts to build up, the pressure starts squeezing it together. Our rain will come and eventually get cemented together. This very nice rock layer. Well, there's a very nice example of this in Laetoli in Tanzania, where a volcano sometime in the distant past had erupted and deposited ash across a huge field, which subsequently hardened and became rock. Now, scientists, to prove that they can date fossils using radiometric dating methods like carbon-14. Now, for rock, they don't use carbon-14 because it's only supposed to be effective to a maximum of 50,000 years. So they use other radiometric methods, potassium argon, for example. They all work essentially the same way. So different teams of scientists have gone to this field and taken samples and dated them. And they concluded that the rock layer was about 3.6 million years old. 3.6 million years old. And as I said, it was tested by different types of radiometric dating methods. And they all agree, because that's how the game is played. Once one value is published, you have to agree with it, as long as it fits the evolutionary timeline. Now, 3.6 million years ago, they say, in their worldview, what was happening 3.6 million years ago? What was happening in terms of the human race? Well, we hadn't come along yet at all. 3.6 million years ago, the creatures living at the time were the Australopithecus. Tiny ape-like creatures that would eventually evolve through many different steps into modern man. So 3.6 million years ago was the time of Australopithecus. Australopithecus was a very famous skeleton. An archaeologist or paleontologist named Donald Johanson had excavated a skeleton, partial skeleton, of an Australopithecus afarensis back in 1974. They touted that was 40% complete, which had nothing close to that. In fact, it's actually about 26% complete. There's 47 bones there, not complete, some of them out of 207 bones, so about 26% complete. But this was our best fossil evidence to that point of Australopithecus, our distant ancestor. Well, around 1976, along comes the very famous paleontologist, Dr. Mary Leakey of the very famous Leakey family, who found a lot of our supposed ancestors. And Mary Leakey had the idea, well, let's pull up parts of this tuff and see what we find underneath. Well, they pulled up some of the tuff, and underneath it they found a trail of footprints, fossilized footprints that had been made in the tuff when it was still soft, and then when it hardened into bone, it kept the imprints of these footsteps. Well, it's under the tuff. What does that tell us about how old it has to be?
3.6 million years?
Yes, it has to be at least as old as the tuff itself if it's under the tuff. So here's a trail of footprints, 3.6 million years old,
Yeah.
when Australopithecus was supposedly around and modern man wasn't. And suddenly a huge problem hit because these footprints were completely modern human footprints. Oh, wow. What do you do when you're an evolutionist and you're faced with this problem? Oh, you're kind of stuck. Here's some stunning new evidence that disproves your theory, because if you had modern humans walking around at the same time as their distant ancestors, Australopithecus, then obviously modern man didn't evolve from Australopithecus or any of those other intermediates. This was a big problem for them. Well, they had two gambits that they went with on this. Number one was to say, well, look, these look like completely modern human footprints, but we're sure they aren't. There are differences, and careful studies will show differences, many differences, significant differences. And they had a second gambit, which they could get away with. Because if we look at the skeleton of Lucy, what bone do we not have? Where do we not have bones from?
Yeah, we're missing the feet of these.
We're missing the feet. So it became very possible to say that, look, Australopithecus was indeed a tiny, hunched over, fur-covered, ape-faced ancestor of man whose feet just happened to look like yours and mine. They were modern feet. The feet evolved first.
Very convenient.
Indeed. And for a period of 10 years or more, you would see pictures in National Geographic, artists' reconstruction of Mr. and Mrs. Australopithecus walking across this plain. And in the background, you can see a volcanic eruption and the ash getting ready to fall down and cover the footprints. So these were their stories, and they were sticking to them. The first one ground to a halt by the year 1990. Scientists in the University of Chicago, led by Dr. Ron Tuttle, had spent a long time studying these footprints every which way, the size, the morphology, the gait pattern, everything. And they had to conclude that these footprints were absolutely indistinguishable in every way from modern human footprints, albeit made by somebody who walked habitually barefoot, which is what's very common in that part of the world.
Yeah.
So that cover story was blown. The only dodge left was to say that, well, the feet evolved first. The Australopithecus had feet just like ours. And that one continued for another 5 years. And then in 1995, finally, foot bones of Australopithecus were discovered at Sterkfontein in South Africa. And enough bones, crucial point, to show something significant, something that we'd expected, because it was clear that Australopithecus was an ape, not a man, and not a hominid. The foot bones showed that Australopithecus' feet had an opposable big toe, like a chimpanzee. In other words, the big toe is not inline like a human being where the toe lines up with the other four toes.
Right.
It's opposable like our thumb is to our fingers.
So they can grab things.
Exactly, grasping. Well, the Laetoli footprints were obviously not made by a creature that had an opposable big toe. They're absolutely indistinguishable from modern human footprints. The big toe was inline.
I see.
Couldn't have been made by Australopithecus. Now you're stuck. With both cover stories blown now, what can you do? What can you do? The Laetoli footprints are proof positive that human beings, so-called modern human beings, lived at the same time as the supposed distant ancestors of theirs, which means they are not ancestors at all. It means that these were apes who happened to be living the same time as people. Fits in perfectly with the biblical account that land animals were made on day 6 and people were made on day 6. So you'd expect to have humans and apes walking together. Not a problem. Okay? The date, obviously, the 3.6 million years, well, that's their claim. And they're stuck with that then, because then 3.6 million years is time of Australopithecus. 3.6 million years now, we have modern human footprints. They are stuck.
I see.
Those dates aren't correct. We'll look at that later, but
Okay.
for them, they're stuck. And a few creationists, like myself, crowed at the time. I sent in a letter to the Toronto Star that was published, pointing out the significance of this to those who missed it. And the letter read like this: regarding the AP Reuters article, Fossilized Foot Bones Said to be Missing Link, about South African scientists allegedly finding a missing link between man and ape with the discovery of 4 3.5 million year old fossilized foot bones. Not only have these scientists not found a missing link between man and ape, they have in fact succeeded in disproving the theory of human evolution. In 1977, a team of scientists working at Lutoli, Tanzania, discovered a set of fossilized footprints virtually identical to modern human footprints, but dated as being 3.5 million years old. In order to avoid the obvious implication that modern humans lived contemporaneously with their alleged ancestors, the Australopithecines, scientists were forced to maintain the dubious idea that the Australopithecines had feet virtually identical to those of modern humans. However, the South African scientists described in your article have shown that the Australopithecines had opposable big toes. They could not have made the Lutoli footprints. Therefore, these footprints prove that modern man existed contemporaneously with the now extinct Australopithecines and could not have evolved from them. It seems that the creationists are correct, after all. Mm-hmm. So, you expect with the self-correcting methodology of science and scientists, impartial and disinterested searchers for the truth who go where the evidence leads them, that, of course, now they would have to rethink the whole idea of human evolution. Do you think they did that?
Probably not.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. Here is a Scientific American, September 1998 issue. It's got the Lutoli footprints on the cover. And on the cover it says, they are precious clues to the past, rare fossil tracks left millions of years ago by humanity's ancestors. So why has science buried them? A last look at Lutoli. What does that mean? Well, this was very inconvenient for them. And they said, oh, look, we've uncovered these footprints. They're eroding away from the elements. We better just rebury them. Which they did.
Thank you, everyone, for listening today. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but please join us for the next part tomorrow. Same time and same place. If you enjoy our content and think this is important material, the best compliment you can pay is by sharing this with your friends and family. This helps us out a lot. Also, if you enjoyed today's program, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to this podcast. We would love to hear from you. Thank you for listening to the Truth in My Days podcast with John Torse. We would love to hear from you. Please feel free to share any questions or comments you may have. You can reach us on Facebook, Instagram, MeWe, and YouTube. Simply search Truth in My Days as one word. Again, Truth in My Days as one word, no spaces in between. And you can connect with us. You may also visit our website for more comprehensive material and to learn more about our ministry. Our website is truthinmydays.com. Thank you.